Hey folks, Taylor here. We've got a great show in store for you today. I'm going to be talking with Brian Sciaretta about some dual nationals, about some young up-and-coming Americans, and about some Americans playing abroad. Then Daryl and I answer some listener questions, talk about the U.S. women's recent game against Canada, and we also update the TSS Scouting Network. But before we get to all that, I wanted to let you know that we have a returning sponsor, an oldie but a goodie. It's Fucci, makers of the highly engineered soccer rebounders. For those that are new, that's Fucci, spelled F-U-T-C-H-I. It essentially combines soccer and squash so that you can do some one-on-one training if you want to. You can play against one opponent or many opponents. You can do it in your backyard. You can do it in a park. It fits everywhere. It's great for all sorts of activities. If you don't believe me, you can go to YouTube where you can watch many different videos of Daryl and I playing it in many different situations, including how not to play, the best ways to play, us playing as Santa Clauses, us playing in like 110-degree temperatures. It's all very interesting and hopefully slightly captivating, maybe, possibly, who knows. But best of all, and more to the point, they've got a deal for TSS listeners. If you go to playfucci.com, there's a link in the show notes if you want to follow that. The rebounder is already discounted, but if you enter the promo code TSS2017 at checkout, you can get $20.17 off of a Fucci rebounder. 2017 more, that is. So again, just follow the link in the show notes or go to playfucci.com to get your Fucci in time for the holidays. And with all that said, on with today's show.
And welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove, and I am joined by the new interview champion of the Total Soccer Show. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. It's adorable to me that you think that's a new title.
Well, so for the past few weeks, you've been coaching on Fridays, so we've sort of instituted Interview Friday, where I've gone out and interviewed people, and I felt I was the interview champion. Yeah. And then this week, you interviewed Eric Wynalda about his candidacy for the US soccer presidency.
This is fact.
That's yesterday's show. There's been a really good reaction to it. There's one listener I know really enjoyed it. His name is me, because I listened. I hadn't heard it, right? I did the intro with you, but I hadn't heard it. I listened when I walked the dog this morning. Really good interview. A lot of really good questions from you. Really interesting answers from Eric Wynalda.
Definitely some interesting answers from Eric Wynalda.
In a good way, though. Not interesting in a... You know, some people say interesting meaning not good.
Yeah. No, that's my wife. When something's interesting, it means it's bad. Not in this situation. This was good answers, and I would say interesting, informative, and sometimes inflammatory answers. The three I's.
Which could be the Eric Wynalda sort of slogan.
Yeah. I think my guess is that he's trying to downplay a little bit of that outspokenness.
Yes.
But I think it still
Didn't he talk about how... I don't want to do like a whole post-match review of the Wynalda interview, but he did talk a lot about how he has an on-air persona, and that people think that is really him. And I've heard Alexi Lalas say the exact same things to both of us, right? About how you have to have a take in 10 seconds when the red light is on TV, but that doesn't mean that's your personality. That just means that you're sort of performing for the camera and you're trying to like cause a reaction in the short space of time you have.
True. I think sometimes, though, the inclination is to steer into whatever your dominant personality traits are, because that's the easiest way to have that sort of character come out.
Yeah, you get sort of boiled down and magnified.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. So, but the other reason you're the interview champion is that today's show, you have an interview with one of my favourites, genuinely, Brian Sciaretta. Great soccer writer. Lots of contacts, lots of insight. Brian Sciaretta.
Friend of the show status, as you'll hear later. Yes.
Oh, so I haven't heard this one either. I guess I'll listen to this when I walk the dog tomorrow.
If we keep this pattern going...
Me and Austin have a lot of podcast listening between us.
This is true. I think if we keep this pattern going... Do you really?
No.
I think you should. I think my dog would just be concerned. I'm going to keep this going and just talk smack about you in an interview, so then you praise it, and then you go home and listen to it, and you're like, wait a minute.
So later in today's show, Taylor will be talking to Brian Sciaretta. Along with our listeners, I'm excited to hear it.
Yep.
But first, we've got some listener questions to answer. Later in the show as well, we're going to talk US Women's National Team, the away game in Canada.
We are indeed, but right now, shall we question it up?
Let's question it
All
up.
Right.
Okay. First question comes from Alex King. We've been sitting on this question for a couple of weeks because I wasn't quite sure how to answer it. Now I have an idea. Alex wants to know, when you're setting up your ideal team, what is your favourite formation and the characteristics you look for from each position? Position, excuse me.
I know what you meant.
I'm interested in what the general consensus is, but more so what you two specifically look for. So, do you want to go first, Taylor?
I mean, my preferred formation. It's a 3-4-3. I love a 3-4-3.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Is this ever since Antonio Conte made it fashionable?
No, man. This is what we played in high school. This is my high school formation. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
All
that
right.
we, myself, former co-host Albert, and a couple other people instituted because we did not have coaches who did a lot of coaching in high school.
Well, you did a player revolt?
No, he just didn't care. So we just decided this is what we're going to play.
Did he say a formation at the start of the game and then you secretly went and did a 3-4-3, or did he just not have one at all?
We had a new head coach every year I was in high school. Mm-hmm. So by my junior year, we were just sort of like, this is what we played last year, this is what we do. And then we just kind of roll with it. It was sort of a revolving door of coaches.
I will say, okay, sneak peek for anyone who plays on our Sunday team. It's the final game of the season this Sunday.
Giving things away, Daryl.
Yeah, final game of the season this Sunday. We can't win the league now because we lost the big title decider. I think we're going to roll out a 3-4-3. So we're going to have Taylor's favourite formation this Sunday.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
Why do you like it then, and what do you look for in the various positions, which is Alex's question?
I mean, the thing is, when we played it, I think we really just did more of three center backs, 4 midfielders, 3 forwards, but it wasn't that sort of Antonio Conte, it's actually a 3-4-2-1 and this kind of that. It was just much more of we basically had 3 very good forwards that we wanted to play at the same time. So it made sense to kind of keep them all, and they kind of rotated around. It was a little bit amorphous up top, but then you kind of kept the same shape of you had your left midfielder, right midfielder. They basically played as left midfielders, and not really. It was more of midfielders, than we just had 3 defenders. Because I think at the time it was either 4-4-2 we were going up against, or that was pretty much it. It was always 4-4-2. And so it was, you had the back 3, you could have the 2 assigned to those 2 forwards, you had 1 roaming center back. It tended to work.
All right, I'm going to cut you off there because I feel like in Richmond there is a dangerous high school nostalgia that a lot of people can go into. We could end up reliving your school days. My favourite, unless you had anything else to say, my favourite formation, genuinely, if you didn't have to really consider what the other team was doing, I love to watch a good old-fashioned 4-4-2.
Proper Englishman.
And I love the combination of a central midfielder, really defensive midfielder who's going to sort of cause trouble and break things up, and then a fancy attacking midfielder with all the skills, just that pairing in the middle. It's kind of impossible now, right? Because you face so many 3-man midfields. But then I love 2 fast, dribbly wingers who would get to the end line and cut it back or cross it in. And I love 2 strikers, sort of 1 big man, 1 little fast man. I think that's the classic combo. And Andy Carroll, Javier Hernandez at West Ham could be that right now.
But it is also everything is sort of cyclical, it feels. I know people would say fashion is a wave. I'm not quite sure how that works, but I feel like fashion is a circle. So I feel like
fashion is a flat circle.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like so too is soccer. So in 40 years, maybe, you'll get to experience the joys of everybody playing a 4-4-2 again.
Do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the reason it's the formation that's stuck for so long is because it gives you the most sort of equitable spread of players around the field, right? You get 2 centre forwards, you get 2 centre midfielders, you get every area of the pitch is basically covered. But then it got booted out because so many people came back with a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3. Then suddenly those 2 central midfielders are in trouble because there's too many men to try and track.
I feel like a lot of the coaches today who really love that 4-4-2, looking specifically at England, could not say the word equitable. Looking at you, Harry Redknapp, and Sam Allardyce.
Harry Redknapp could say it, he just couldn't spell it.
Yeah, okay.
There we go. All right, should we move on?
Sure. Let's move on to the next question from Chris Bentley. Says, in light of not qualifying for the World Cup, key distinction, is so many national team players playing in MLS a problem?
I mean, I think we've already sort of talked about this because Jermaine Jones put that Instagram video out not long after the failure to qualify. And if I remember our conversation from then, the answer was basically yes, right? That one of the problems is too many players. And again, I hate calling players out, but specifically, let's say Graham Zusi played his whole career in Major League Soccer. And it makes me think if he had gone to Europe and sort of, rounded some edges and improved various parts of his game, he'd have been a much more useful player. And then there's the element of would 30-year-old Michael Bradley be a better player if he'd been staying in Europe as opposed to spending the last few years in Toronto? So I kind of want to say yes. Not just in a specific player problem, maybe in a player development problem as well, which is what Jones was talking about, right? If a lot of players more players had been in Europe and been allowed to move, then we would have been selecting a more Europe-heavy roster. And I would say it would have been a stronger roster.
Yeah. All right, next question.
Does that shut it down?
No, I just don't want to answer. No, I agree with you. And I would say that it's not a problem with players playing in MLS. I might not even go as far as to like go after Graham Zusi. Not that you went after Graham Zusi, but
I kind of apologized for it and then did it. And I feel bad still.
Well, I think the problem is so many players in their prime or like approaching their prime, because you don't just want to like, oh, I'm really good all of a sudden, time to go to Europe. Like you kind of got to give yourself a little bit of a cushion. Yeah. That's why we want players like Kellen Acosta right now to really start looking, really start exploring those options.
Right.
I think it's okay to be 17 and 18 and sort of getting those minutes, getting confident, getting your footing, then realizing, okay, I can kind of start to look for other greener pastures, which hopefully will stay greener. And then I think it's okay for players who feel like, okay, I could maybe push myself a little bit more, but I'm like, I'm 29, 30, I'm ready to come back, make some money, get settled. And that is okay with me too. But I feel like that period between like 23, 24 and like 28, 29, I do feel like we have too many players relying on large MLS paychecks as opposed to...
Well, not that large, but yeah.
I mean, for some, much larger than what they probably would have been getting elsewhere.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, maybe not even much larger because players tend to be pretty well paid in Europe. But
you're talking like Josie, for example, getting paid much more by
Mm-hmm.
Toronto than he would have been for a European team.
And even Josie's like... It's debatable for me because he had some success in Europe. I would argue he had more failures than he had success. And so he did kind of go push himself, tried this worked, this didn't, this also didn't. Okay, yeah, I'll go back to MLS and kind of continue to push myself there.
All right, I didn't plan to take us in this direction, but I feel like thinking of Josie Altidore, better than playing in Major League Soccer. I would say better than playing in the Netherlands. Do you remember how he just could not stop scoring goals at RZ, which is the reason he got that move to Sunderland? Maybe the Premier League was a reach. Playing for a bad team on the Premier League in the Premier League
twice
with Hull City, was too much of a reach for him. And then I would argue he's not quite rounded and good enough to play for a really good team in the Premier League, right? So even though he's better than Sunderland, I would say, and just wasn't well served at Sunderland, there are going to be players ahead of him if he goes to a bigger team, right?
So what would have been the best league?
That was going to be my question. Like maybe there's a sort of mid to lower table Bundesliga team who Josie could have played for. Maybe somewhere in Ligue 1, which is, I would say, a step up from the Eredivisie. If you're playing for like Lyon.
It depends on where you're
like
playing. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I think maybe sort of either a bigger team in a lower league, which is what I'm thinking of, like Lyon in Ligue 1. Because Ligue 1 is not as good as the Bundesliga or the Premier League. Please feel free to tweet at me if you disagree.
No, but I'm with you because I think also like Spain, I think is too technical. I don't think he would have succeeded there. I think that would have been problematic for him.
But that would have been a nice challenge for him if he was he was at Villarreal.
Yeah, how'd that go?
But as a young man, so maybe if he went back there as a more mature gentleman with a more rounded game, there's a chance. He's still the only American to score in La Liga. Did you notice that?
No, I did not know that.
I think on his birthday recently, La Liga tweeted at him to say congratulations happy birthday to Josie Altidore, still the only American to score in La Liga.
Well, then we're good. Success. He's done it. But yes.
But you know what I'm saying? There was like a middle ground between Eredivisie and Premier League where he could have advanced his career in terms of how good he is, literally how good he is to challenge himself and get better.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yes. And so I think to that point, we go back to the original question. And I think there are players that probably could challenge themselves and push themselves. Now, there are a lot of obstacles that prevent them from doing so. Some of them are bureaucratic.
Stuff,
some of them are passport stuff. Some of them are just, the player's own inclination or desire to go abroad. But I think there's definitely players that could be moving. And I think it could help the United States if they did.
And final point on this, one of the things Jermaine Jones talked...
I also just want to add really quickly, it's not even necessarily trying, I'm not even necessarily saying that because Major League Soccer isn't good enough, but I am also pointing out that there are guys who come back, without going specific, there are guys who come back or stay in Major League Soccer. That's a roster spot that a 17 or 18-year-old doesn't get because that person is now there.
Absolutely.
If Graham Zusi does go, there's another 17, 18-year-old, 19-year-old who now maybe can come in.
Maybe Eric Palmer-Brown could have got his foot in the door and played right back for a bit at Sporting KC, right?
Yeah.
It's too early to say. It's too early to say Jalen Lindsay, but maybe.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
One thing I was going to say is Jermaine Jones pointed out in that Instagram feed that if you look back at the roster, he joined under Bob Bradley because he came in under Bob Bradley.
Right.
Say the roster that went to the 2010 World Cup. Look how many names on that roster were in Europe versus were in Major League Soccer. I think it's always worth having Major League Soccer players on the roster, right? I don't ever want it to be that only players in Europe should be on the US roster. But if you look and it's like a majority domestic roster and your domestic league is not one of the best leagues in the world, then suddenly you've got to kind of accept that you're not going to compete.
Yeah, to the extent that like when Jermaine Jones first joined, it really was like you could have we're going to go and play 2 European friendlies. Let's get all the European-based players. We're going to be here.
Cherundolo and Bocanegra and all those guys to choose from.
And then if you're going to stay domestic, we could do some Liga MX, we could do some MLS players. Maybe we'll bring in 1 or 2 Europeans if we need to. Like you kind of could have 2 different teams if you needed to. And really, I haven't felt that way until this roster. And it is part of the reason why I'm kind of excited about the Portugal game is it is the first time I've looked and been like, oh yeah, that guy. Oh, that team. Oh, that team. It's one of the more impressive looking rosters we've seen from the United States
in terms of like you look down the list of if you're on the Wikipedia page and you see like, oh, our midfielders play for Schalke and Sunderland and so on.
Yeah. Well, Sunderland, grain of salt there.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We'll be back, Sunday evening, we'll have a show out specifically previewing the USA v Portugal game where we'll get into what we want our starting 11 to be.
It's been a long week because you just said we'll be back and I was like, oh, we're done? Okay, cool.
More questions?
Yeah.
Okay, so Michael Hastings-Black. Oh, he has a US men's national team question. We know the US should call up and cap Jonathan Gonzalez as soon as possible. We talked about that when he wasn't called up. There are good reasons why we're confident he's still going to play in the future. But Michael also wants to know who are 5 more dual nationals that the US should be tracking. I haven't listened to your Brian Sciaretta interview, but I'm assuming because Sciaretta's really good at that stuff, that there's going to be some names mentioned in your interview.
There are. We talked about Anthony Robinson. He's probably the top of the list for me.
So he's at Bolton on loan from Everton, I want to say. Fullback. English-American fullback.
20-year-old left back,
fast.
We talked about Timothy Tillman as well, the 18-year-old German-American for Bayern Munich's U19s. He's recently been called up by Germany's U19 squad. Brian Sciaretta and I get into that one. But
that's later in today's show.
I've got several more for you if you'd like to hear them.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Conrad de la Fuente?
Only from the TSS Scouting Network. He's at either Barcelona or Real Madrid. I want to say Barcelona. Yes.
16-year-old Spanish-American. I think he was born in Miami, though, but then I've also seen it reported that he was born in Spain, so who knows. But he is already an active member of the US U16s, so it seems like he's committed or interested.
Could you say he has an awesome name as well? It's Conrad with a K, right? So it just looks really cool. Conrad de la Fuente.
Did you know, it's completely random, you know Corrado Soprano?
From The Sopranos?
Yes, that is that
version. Is Corrado Soprano Jr.?
Yes.
Okay.
That is Conrad. That's the Sicilian or Southern Italian version of Conrad. So there you go. So they've got that in common.
So we should check Conrad de la Fuente for signs of senility?
Yeah, why not? Or mafia presence. Kai Koreniuk, 19-year-old Dutch-American forward for Young AZ. He's getting minutes there.
I've literally never heard of him.
There's a lot in there. You're about to be real surprised, Daryl.
K-A-I, how am I spelling Koreniuk?
Koreniuk. There you go.
Scouting Network. I'm adding him to the Scouting Network.
Dutch-American, as I said. And he's played for both, I think, the U.S. and Dutch youth teams. So
these are the kids we should be nervous about, not Jonathan Gonzalez, right? These are the kids with an actual choice to make.
Here are 3 for you that are going to be kind of surprising because they were surprising for me. We talked about Timothy Tillman with Brian Sciaretta, so I'll leave him alone. But I'm going to say Malik Tillman is his younger brother, 15 years old, German-American for Bayern Munich. Also playing for Bayern Munich, Justin Butler. And Jalen Hawkins, both of them 16 years old, both of them playing for Bayern Munich for the youth teams, obviously.
German-Americans?
Yep, all of them German-Americans. So there are 3 potential Americans at Bayern Munich.
Who's the kid at Herenveen?
That is... we talk about him on the show. No, shoot, I can't remember his name.
Okay, if you can't remember now, you and Brian Sciaretta talk about him?
Kick Petrie or something like that? Okay. Yeah, something strange and Dutch.
You'll find out later in today's show.
You will.
And I guess I will when I listen.
Yeah, I think so.
Me and Austin will find out on the dog walk.
There you go. Yeah, and I mean, so that's just a few. Kyle Scott in there as well, the 19-year-old Chelsea, playing for U23s, as you'll hear from Brian. That's not an ideal thing.
Isn't he a kid that was sort of raised in England, though?
Yeah, he's England, USA, I think leaning towards England. But again, those are 9 players right there that are all potential U.S. national team players, also potential other national team players.
Great.
Many, many, many more. A great one, if you want to, is the USMNT Center app, and then it's also the USMNTcenter.com is the website.
So yeah, they were a recent advertiser on the Total Soccer Show. It's a website and an app, and it's now available in the Android store. I know some people were worried at the time it was only available for Apple. It's now available in the Android store, USMNT Center. they've got a huge list of all the sort of dual national US youth players that you'll want to be keeping an eye on, as well as the sort of senior grown-ups who you also should keep an eye on. Yeah, USMNT Centre. I guess they just got a free ad.
Indeed.
Thanks,
Indeed. Yeah, no problem. So lots to keep an eye on there. And also, another question from Michael Hastings Black. For you, Daryl, why not? What is the actual difference between Division II and Division III in U.S. soccer pyramid? I understand that NASL and USL are keen to be D2, but there is no Pro-Rel or Rel Pro. So what does it matter? People say sponsors wouldn't want D2, but what does a D2 team offer that a D3 does not?
So I've heard this question. I've heard variations on this question before. It's all in the perception. That's all it is.
Yep.
So if you go to a sponsor, say you are an NASL team, and you're going to a sponsor, and the sponsor is, we've already done Cholula, what else we got? Deer Park Water.
Sure.
I'm looking at things sitting on our desk. So the sponsor is Deer Park Water, but the person at Deer Park Water you're speaking to has no idea about soccer, right? So they don't know the difference between D2 and D3, but they know that D1's the best, D2's the second best, D3's the third best. So you have to say to your Deer Park person, either we're a D2 team.
You're wishing you'd gone with a one-syllable company at this point?
Or a D3 team.
Yeah.
Right? So, and it's all in the perception, because you are of lower value if you're a D3 team.
Yeah.
Just because it's the number is farther from the top. Even if there's no actual difference in what happens on the field, you are of perceived lower value, and therefore Deer Park can offer you a smaller fee to advertise, right? And then I think, as you pointed out when we discussed this off air, it's not just the advertisers.
No, it's the players as well.
Yes.
I mean, you can get right now, because like NASL has the reputation it has from lots of different famous people have played in various but also like various iterations of the NASL throughout the years.
Pelé.
Yeah, I mean exactly. So then you can get
Cruyff, best, basically all of them. Beckenbauer.
So you can get Raul and Joe Cole being like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's exciting. I'll go play for that team and I get to be in Florida. Awesome. But suddenly, if you're dropping down a division, that might not be as alluring anymore, because then it's like, wait, now I'm going to play. You don't want that to be the footnote on your career. It's like, and I think he's playing in like the third division in the United States. Like that doesn't sound as good.
And there's also, if you are completely ignorant of New York Cosmos history and all that sort of stuff, right? If you don't care about Pelé and Beckenbauer and that, and you're a player who's just coming over to the US and you get offered a contract and you say to the team, you say to the I was going to say Tampa Bay Rowdies, but they're USL. You say to Miami FC, oh, what division are you in? And they say, we're a D3 team. You say, all right, well, thank you for your time. I'm going to be on my way.
Exactly.
Right? So if a player just hears that you're a D2 team or a D3 team, even though it maybe isn't that different, it still means something to that player.
Yeah.
Same that it does to an advertiser.
And speaking of the point you just made, I feel the need to note that, yes, I know Tampa Bay are in USL. We covered their games this season. But Joe Cole signed for them when they were an NASL team.
Yes, he
feel
did.
the need to put that in there before we get some tweets.
Right.
Yes.
We'll give him his full name, Joseph Colesif.
Exactly. And maybe it doesn't seem like it should be that big of a difference, but it is.
Yep. And perception is reality.
It is. And you get into then
like I'm Don Draper over here.
Yeah. And if you also get into the marketing side of it, the money that's being put into the league, and it really will just be sort of like, okay, MLS, maybe you're going to play all over the country. USL, you're going to play in like half of the country, but the lower you get,
much on the East Coast, and then a little bit on the West Coast.
Yeah, and so then you get like further down there, it's going to be like, all right, now you're playing in like these three states, and it changes perception, it changes what you're able to offer, and it changes the money coming in too.
So there you go. If you have questions for the Total Soccer Show, please ask them at totalsoccershow.com/questions. If you subscribe to the show at $10 a month or higher, we guarantee to answer one question per month on the Total Soccer Show. We have a lot more questions to answer. We're going to do some more maybe Sunday night as part of our USA-Portugal preview.
Is plan
indeed.
But before we do that, Daryl Grove, we have a sponsor on today's show.
We have a D1 sponsor. They are the Division 1 of soccer scarf companies. It's Roughneck Scarves. Thank you to Roughneck Scarves for sponsoring today's show. You will have heard a Fucci ad at the beginning of today's episode. This is a TSS, I'm declaring this, a TSS Classic Sponsors episode.
Okay.
These are some of our original sponsors who came on board with TSS. So our current campaign for Roughneck Scarves, we asked on Twitter, if you were to design a custom Roughneck scarf to represent the US roster to face Portugal, what would it look like? And then I sat back and watched the brilliant tweets come in. I really enjoyed this.
Soccer Never Sleeps, a.k.a. Jersey Jonathan, said it would say the future is now on one side and World Cup champions 2022 on the other. Hashtag USMNT.
All right. I like Jersey Jonathan's optimism there. Eric Freeman tweeted us a picture of the yellow and black striped under construction banner, which I think is a really good representation of what is happening with this US team.
Drunky Cazorla with beer emojis in the name. It would come with fake ID for all the teenagers.
That's funny, except in Europe, the drinking age is much lower, so they wouldn't need fake.
There you go.
Josh Sargent would still need fake ID.
He still would, wouldn't he? Is it 18 in England?
It's 18 in England. I don't know what it is in Portugal.
I'm going to guess 18. Maybe 16.
I'm going to guess
maybe whatever. It's
those continental Europeans.
Yeah.
Patrick Blanton says, a red, white and blue version of the hello and welcome scarf that is already the TSS scarf.
That is true.
I say this, Patrick knows how to get his name on the Total Soccer Show.
Yep.
But the hello and welcome TSS scarf is available in the Roughneck Scarf store. We encourage you to buy it. It is a wonderful Thanksgiving or Christmas gift. Now that the weather's getting colder.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there you go. West Chappell, who I'm going to assume is in his late 30s or early 40s, says New Kids on the Block on one side with an image of the all-young call-ups posing like an 80s or 90s boy band on the other.
Oh, I really hope that the US sort of holds on to a lead late over Portugal and we can say that they were hanging tough.
Is that one of their songs? See, this is
pretty
they
sure
were kind of before. All I know is the right stuff. That's it. And the Weird Al parody, the white stuff.
Maybe they'll have the right stuff as well.
Yeah.
Final one. We got many and they were all good, but final one that we chose was from Ryan Altenbach.
Johnny Wahlberg is the best Wahlberg.
Who said
no one.
His scarf would have tiny little bald eagles in a nest being fed by a larger Alejandro Bedoya bald eagle. Yes, love it.
Oh my god, that might be my favorite offering we've ever gotten right there. Well done, Ryan.
So you really can design a custom scarf at Roughneck Scarves, and then you sort of order them in bulk, and then you can sell them. Like if you're supporting your local soccer team, or a youth team, or a charity. I think people did the Refugees Welcome scarf through roughneckscarves.com. You can do that at roughneckscarves.com. If you just go to the roughneckscarves.com store and you just want to buy sort of an individual scarf for your favorite MLS team, for a US national team, go to roughneckscarves.com and use the coupon Total Soccer Show. You'll get 20% off any scarf you find in the roughneckscarves.com store. I just want to make really clear, you don't get the 20% off the custom scarf order. You do get it off any individual scarf that you buy for yourself. And the best scarf in there says hello and welcome on it.
There we go. No disagreements there. Once again, that promo code was Total Soccer Show, all one word, all uppercase. That gets you 20% off. Thank you to Roughneck Scarves for sponsoring today's show.
Links will be in the show notes. Please click them.
Indeed.
All right, Taylor. So I guess I should step aside as we play Taylor's interview with Brian Sciaretta. Anything you want to say to set this up?
No, other than that, Brian gets friend of the show status right up front, and I think he deserves it because he always has interesting stuff to say. I really enjoyed our conversation about dual nationals because it did kind of change the way I think of them a little bit.
Okay.
So that was very good. I'm also going to add that I think it's about 38 minutes or 40 minutes long. So Daryl Grove is now going to step outside for 40 minutes. I'm just going to play it straight through. Then you can come back in, but you have to go sit outside.
How about I teach you some lessons about how editing works instead?
No. Just going to have 40 minutes of silence.
All right, so we'll be back on the other side to talk US Women's National Team game against Canada and some great updates from the TSS Scouting Network.
Joining me now, I've got Brian Sciaretta of American Soccer Now, and I'm going to say also of friend of the show status. I think you've been on enough now that you're a friend of the show. Does that work for you?
Oh, it works for me. It's an interesting threshold whenever you cross that.
Yeah, it just means, we go from like Brian Sciaretta in the formal tone to just like, hey, Brian, how you doing?
So yeah, it's all good. It's always good to be back and chatting about whatever you guys want to chat about.
Yeah, well, we've got a couple different things to get to today because I did want to talk to you a little bit about some dual nationals. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the U17s, but first I wanted to start, since you are, I'm going to say, a knower of all things, not to hype you up too much. I wanted to ask you a little bit about some Americans abroad. Maybe not like the biggest names out there, but some of the names that could be the bigger names in the future. Starting with somebody like, say, Cameron Carter-Vickers, and I'm wondering what you've made of his kind of growth in the last couple of months and what your expectations are for him, both for the rest of the season and maybe next season as well.
I mean, it's been a dream loan really so far. I mean, he's gotten playing time in a 3-man back line for a team that's going to contend for a promotion to the Premier League. I mean, I don't think you can ask for anything more than that, really. So it's great. He's finally getting minutes. I mean, he was very rusty when you remember watching him in Tottenham's preseason. Like, I didn't think he looked very good, but not because he's not talented, just because he hasn't played. I mean, the benefit last year was, like, he was making Tottenham's first team bench, which is interesting and it's good, but he's not playing reserve team minutes. So his number of games he had went from like 40 something or low 50s to like 12 games he played in last year in the calendar year. So it was a really difficult situation. Now he's back into the routine and contributing his growth after what I thought was a good year. And look, he could get back into the Premier League next year if he or he can help get a team back to the Premier League. The problem is like, and you don't know anything yet, is what is Tottenham's threshold for selling him, and what is Sheffield United's appetite for buying him. I don't think they could put together a serious offer until you know what Sheffield United's status is going to be next year. Are they a Premier League team? Well, then they got a budget to probably afford Cameron Carter-Vickers. Can they buy him if they stay in the Championship? Maybe not.
If they were to go up, do you think that's something that they would want to do? And do you think that's something that Tottenham would entertain, or is it just kind of all about the price tag?
Well, yeah, it's going to be all about the price tag. I think Sheffield United would like to have him back. Now, obviously, any team that goes up always makes some upgrades, and you'll be dealing with a 20-year-old central defender at that point going against Premier League attack, which is a heck of a lot different and a heck of a lot more challenging than the Championship. But, you know, he's doing well, and if he continues to excel, and he's made some mistakes this year, he's given up some penalties and been part of some defensive miscues, but he's getting better. The rate of his mistakes are fewer and far between than they used to be. So, you know, I think it's going to come down to, you know, if he can continue this kind of growth rate, I think Sheffield United would like to have him back. And if they go up, then it comes down to what is Tottenham ask of Sheffield United, and are they going to price gouge? You know, and I mean, it comes down to Sheffield United. Do they want him have him back? Yeah, but do they want him have him back as like a, you know, $15 million transfer? No. But do they want to have him back as, you know, 5, 6, 7? I think so. You know, so it's going to come down to negotiations and what's reasonable, what's not, and how he performs the rest of the year, because he's not under contract with this team.
So as you mentioned, they're challenging for promotion. A team that is doing the opposite of that would be Sunderland, where Lyndon Gooch is sort of playing. From what I've seen, he's got 10 championship appearances, only 2 starts. They are rooted at the bottom of the table. What have you heard in terms of what the situation is with him at club level? And maybe what do you think happens if Sunderland continue to struggle? Do you think he gets a move, or do you think he's there for the long run?
It's tough. I mean, he's at an age right now where he's older than Cameron Carter-Vickers, and, you know, he needs to play. I mean, he's an attacker where they kind of mature earlier, and their prime buying years are earlier than a central defender. So he's approaching his prime, his prime years, and you hope that this national team call up, which, on its merits, doesn't seem to be like, you would want it. Would you normally call up the guy who's very seldomly playing for the last place team in the championship? No,
probably not. Yeah,
no, but he does have some talent. He does have some skill, but and who knows what their new manager is going to be like at Sunderland? They just made a change, and whether or not is Lyndon going to be in good shape there. So there's a lot of things. You hope that maybe he can use this national team call up and get on the field and showcase well and maybe pique some interest, because he's better than League One. I mean, and you wonder if, if he does the Sebastian Lletget route, if he entertains that, thing about coming back to Major League Soccer and making a name for himself here. I think it worked for Sebastian. I think he probably could have helped the national team this year if he didn't have that bad injury. That's where you want to see Major League Soccer come in and help guys who can't get on the field sometimes where they're good enough to. Because part of the thing about going abroad is also a little bit of luck and finding good club situations and finding good coaches and finding one that, that likes you, and then he gets fired and the next guy doesn't. It's so you don't know what's going to happen with Lyndon and what the new coach is going to rate him. But yeah, he needs to play. I don't think he's going to be in it for the long haul if he doesn't feel first team minutes are going to be on the horizon, or if they're only going to come if they're in League One. At that point, he's got to be thinking, you got to look at what your own best self-interests are. And he's a better player. He's played in the Premier League now. You remember that. So, I mean, he's playing more in the Premier League than he is now in the last place team of the championship.
That is not ideal. But to your point, something that is ideal is finding the right club, because it does seem like some clubs are more suited or more willing than others to give youngsters minutes to kind of stick with them. In terms of the other players, there are many spread around Europe, but like the other younger players, say Shaq Moore, Luca De La Torre, Rubio Rubin, Mukwele Akele, any of those guys, who do you think is maybe in the best position with their club, either to like maybe start to get minutes or has the kind of structure around them that they can continue to grow and develop into a starter?
Well, you didn't mention him, but Anthony Robinson, I think, is the guy that I'm thinking of, because a lot of those guys I don't think are in good club situations. Like, you can go down the list. Mm-hmm. I mean, Rubio Rubin is out of a contract now with Staubach. He was only signed with Staubach through the end of the year, and he didn't play. I mean, that's not good. I mean, you're dealing with a league that's far less than Major League Soccer. I mean, I don't know if you don't impress in Norway, you're not the kind of guy who can come back to Major League Soccer and easily expect to find a job. Luca De La Torre's made one championship appearance, and he didn't even get off the bench or make the bench the following game. I mean, we're dealing with like one or two championship minutes. He played in the Bundesliga just last week, but Caleb Stanko, he got on the field because there was a red card suspension. I mean, there's a guy who's 24. I mean, you need to be playing at that age. That is your prime. Being on the bench, there's no glory of being on the bench, even in the top league when you're in your prime. I mean, maybe at the young ages, that's something. Shaq Moore is another guy who's, he made 2 appearances, then went back to the bench. He still hasn't forced his way into the lineup. And, I don't know if he will, but, so there's all kinds of questions with those guys. And it's really guesswork as to say who's in the best one among guys who are in really iffy situations. But at least Anthony Robinson is on his way up. I mean, he's getting rave reviews from Bolton. He's raised his game to the point where the coach can't take him off the field because he's helping this team win. I mean, they haven't lost in 5 games. They were long thought to be the worst team in the championship this year, but now it looks like they're almost clawing their way out of the relegation zone, and he's been a part of that. And he has a lot of speed. He's on a half-season loan. It probably sounds like they'll extend it to a full year, but that's not to be determined from Everton. But he's speedy, left back. I mean, and he's getting better in all different facets of the game. I mean, none of the other guys yet have, for example, Shaq Moore. It's great you played in the Premier League, but La Liga? But did you put yourself in a position where the coach he can't afford to take you off, or he has to play you? None of those guys have done that yet. So it's really tough to say.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, because it is sort of a weird, like, what have you done for me lately situation. So you have, like, Akele, he goes to Villarreal. That's really exciting, right? He's just like 17, 18
He's
year old.
He's going to be 21 years old.
I know, that's the thing.
At some point, you can't just be happy with where you are as a youth player. At some point, you need to be like, you need to have some guys who grab the game and by the what and are really assertive and just like say, you can't take me off because I'm gonna sit there and carry this team. And Rubio Rubin was benched at Utrecht, was sold to Silkeborg in Denmark, played 1 game, and he made he didn't even make any starts, or maybe 1 for Staubach, and so everything's been going down for him. So it's like, unfortunate. And I like Rubio as a person. I've spoken with him a bunch of times. He's always been really good, and he looked good at the youth levels, but it's like you need to go out there and put your stamp on a game where like the coach is like, man, I can't take this guy off. You can't just be trading on potential. At some point, you got to be like, when you start getting your 20s, you got to be like, look, this isn't for me. You're not playing me based on what I could do for you in a couple years, theoretically. It's like, I'm going to go out and win this game right now, and you can't take me off. And I give your team the best chance to win. And, where you see what Robinson's doing that for Bolton, and you hope maybe he can stick around there a little bit longer because he's impressing, because you don't want him to go to Everton and sit on the bench. But, none of the other guys are.
Well, you mentioned Robinson. I had him in one of my talking points as dual nationals, right? Because he's eligible for the United States and England. As far as I can tell right now, is leaning towards the United States. Where do you put him in terms of where you expect him to be long term?
Well, yeah, I just interviewed him. I had the interview come out early last week, and he said he'd love to go play for the United States again. He'd pack his bags and go. Fortunately for the United States, Look, his ties to the U.S. aren't that strong. I mean, his dad lived here for 10 years to go to Duke University, played for Duke's soccer team. He came over beforehand and went to White Plains High School in New York and did well there. But he was a naturalized American, then moved back to England. So he doesn't really have any American-born, raised parents or siblings over here or family over here. But, when you look at England, what's the first thing you think of right now is the fact that their youth national teams are kicking ass.
Yeah.
I mean, they won both the U17 and U20 World Cups, and they won Toulon this year, and their U21s and U19s and UEFA tournaments they're all going far in those tournaments if they're not winning them. So it's like I think the writing's on the wall right now that some guys doing well for Bolton right now. I don't think that's going to come anywhere close to like what the 20-year-olds or the teenagers that they have in England are doing right now.
But so just to clarify, then, is he a U.S. citizen, or what would it take for him to be eligible to play for the United States?
No, he's American. He was able to pass on. He was able to pass on his citizenship because
Gotcha.
His dad lived here from his early teenage years through his early 20s, and I think that the law to passing on and becoming FIFA eligible too is that your dad had he meets the FIFA residency requirements, and his dad was a citizen that was born here enough and lived here long enough to pass it on. So he just kind of made that threshold that he's eligible to play. As far as I know, I mean, he's played for the U.S. under 18s, although we've seen some people get called up when they're not exactly eligible.
Yeah.
At the youth levels.
Even at like national team levels, right? Because wasn't who was the guy who played for St. Pauli and now is with Philly? I think he was like called up by Haiti, and then we called him up before he was actually technically eligible. I forget his name, but
Pico. They were pretty adamant that they let Stefan Fry train with the team.
Yeah, that's the other one. Yeah,
I mean they let him and Kuda Mane was called up before he became a citizen or before he met the FIFA residency requirements, and there's all kinds of things that players who've been called up just to train. No one's really you can't play. Or also use an ineligible player. I mean, there's FIFA rules and then there's U.S. citizenship rules. Right. And as far as I know, I've never seen his passport. I never said, do you have a passport? But I assume he's eligible.
That would be a weird way to start the interview. It's like, show me your passport.
I mean,
then we can chat.
It sounds like I'm like a spy or something like shaking. Yeah.
Let's not go down that road. I want to avoid any situation that leads to you like getting held in some sort of international jail. That's what we want to stay away. Espionage jail. We don't want that.
But as far as I know, Anthony is eligible, and his dad seemed to live here. If he lived here for 10 years during the right time, he would be okay to pass on eligible and citizenship requirements. But he might have to prove that if he wanted to go on. But Anthony's an exciting prospect. That's the bottom line.
So the other kind of big, exciting dual national right now is Jonathan Gonzalez, and a lot has been made of him. A lot of people freaked out when he was not involved in this U.S. roster. So I'm going to give you my theory, and then you tell me how wrong I am. But my assumption was basically that he did get called up, or at least was contacted by U.S. Soccer about playing in this friendly against Portugal. There was the conflict with Monterrey's schedule, and I'm assuming that he said something along the lines of, I'm interested in playing for the United States, I'm committed to the United States, but I want to stay with my club because of like the kind of run they're on right now. Does that sound about right, or where would you put him in terms of
or Monterrey said, like, can we keep him, and maybe U.S. Soccer says, like, oh, okay, we have the right to call him, but this is just me guessing, but they could say, like, okay, but, like, maybe during the next U20 World Cup you could have him. We will release him for that, or CONCACAF, U20 championship, because I think he's, him and Tyler Adams look like they're going to be like big parts of the next U20 team. I think look, U.S. Soccer knows obviously about Jonathan Gonzalez. I mean, Tab Ramos, I did that interview with him just like before the downfall, like about 2 weeks before like those last rounds of senior qualifiers. And Tab was like, I talk to him every day. Bruce called him, and U.S. Soccer's known about Jonathan Gonzalez since the U14 level. This isn't like one of those guys that they discover late, and then they kind of hope that they can, get involved with the game, even though he's involved with another national team like Tillman is with Germany. But like this is a guy who didn't sign with Chivas because he wanted to play with the United States, and their policy would preclude that. So, yeah, I mean, look, this is about the most unimportant friendly that you can imagine. I mean, because you're out there to impress nobody, really. I mean, maybe just a future manager that maybe goes back and looks at this game on tape, and whoever the next. I mean, because Saracen won't be the next head coach, so
I would assume not.
Yeah, I mean, but overall, I like the roster. But yeah, I think Jonathan Gonzalez will play for the United States. I mean, I think both federations have been told that. I mean, Mexico last week or 2 weeks ago even came out and said, yeah, he didn't even want to sit down with us to discuss the possibility, to hear us out. So, yeah, I don't think that there's any wavering there among Gonzalez.
That's good. I'm sure people will be reassured. You mentioned the failure to qualify, which I think you called the downfall. I like that one. We call it the recent unpleasantness, but I guess at a certain point it won't be recent. So I think maybe the downfall works. But I think a lot of people were concerned about that failure to qualify, not just because obviously missing out on a World Cup, but about what people might think it means about U.S. soccer as a whole. And I'm wondering what you think, if any, it will have impact it will have on dual nationals. Do you think there is a likelihood that maybe somebody who was on the fence about playing for the USA versus another country will think, they didn't make it to the World Cup, maybe they're not as good as I thought, I'll stick with this other country? Or do you think it's sort of still going to be a case-by-case basis as it always has been?
I think it'll be a case-by-case basis, and you know, you hope that, like, that's the least of their concerns. You know, it's I mean, you know, you hope that, you know, if the player's waiting to decide, you know, how good the national team is, whether, like, are they in it for the right reasons? Mm-hmm. You know, you want them to play for the United States. I mean, the only time I've really heard someone blatantly really make a decision based on their ability for, you know, the quality of the national team is Kenny Sciaretta. You know, he was out there saying, like, Israel's national team was not good, and even then, like Israel's national team is still further away from the World Cup than the United States, despite what happened. So, you know, I mean, I think he saw that even as a possibility, and you hope that, like, when they go out and they see, like, who's Kenny Sciaretta going to be playing with now? I mean, yes, there's no World Cup, but the next cycle is if he does play well, he could be playing with, like, Christian Pulisic and Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie and Sargent and, you know, all these Vickers and Palmer Brown. There's a lot of good players coming up. So, you know, you hope that sways them, but you also hope that they make the decision not based on opportunist, you know, national team opportunism, but rather they want to represent the country that they feel. I know that's, I'm not, like, naive. I know that they think they always consider it a career move too. A lot of them do, but, you know, you hope that in the end of the day, if someone doesn't choose the United States because he doesn't think that national team is good enough, well, then, you know, you hope that people will really move on quickly from something like that, because you don't want something so opportunistic like that. It's I mean, you know, Iceland made a big deal about losing Aron Johansson to the United States. Remember when the federation's chairman went nuts on it. Now they're in the World Cup and the United States isn't. So, and Aron Johansson can't play. You know, he's not. So it's you know, these things who knows how the future is going to be predicted? It's going to pan out for all these national teams and players and stuff. You just want players to play with the country that they feel most comfortable with, and then they get rewarded in the long run for doing so. You know, I mean, like I said, with you know, Iceland, this generation of players stuck together, and now look at them.
So, with that in mind, one guy who you mentioned briefly earlier, Timothy Tillman, with Bayern Munich, is eligible to play for the United States, but I think
his brother does.
Oh, yeah, there you go. But I think he just accepted a call-up to the German U19s. I might be wrong on that one, but I'm wondering what you think about him. Has that ship sailed in terms of him probably representing Germany, or is it still up in the air?
No, I mean, it's, you know, the chances are that any German U19 guy is going to go on to play a big role with the full German national team is still slim to none. I mean, it's like that with any national team. Go pick a random member of the U19 national team. Brad Friedel's U19 national team for the U.S. The last call up and think, well, is that going to get play for the U.S. national team? The chances are probably no. I mean, it's but at the same point, I mean, should he be playing for Germany? Yeah. I mean, he was born in Germany. He was raised in Germany. He developed in Germany. He's signed with Germany's biggest club. I mean, why wouldn't a guy like that want to play with Germany from a neutral standpoint? Of course he's going to want to play for Germany. I mean, it'd be kind of weird if he didn't play for Germany. it's his homeland. It's where he was born, raised, and developed as a soccer player. And he probably knows all the guys on the German national team because he grew up around them too, and from the same system, from developmental channels. So yeah, the U.S. is going to be a fallback option for a lot of German national team players.
So it's basically if it doesn't work out for him with the German youth setup, then maybe
the chances are it probably won't. And then, but so at that point, I mean, he looks very promising. But again, it's a fallback option for him, and it's up to fans. The fans got to go their own way. I got in trouble last time I was on this program saying like I'm not questioning anyone's patriotism. Mm-hmm. I just want people should go with where they feel the most comfortable with, and I'm not. And fans should feel however they want to feel about a player playing for the national team when it's a fallback option. Some people think that's just fine, and some people don't like it, and I'm fine with however fans want to feel about it.
Well said. I think a lot of it is just that, like, dual nationals, especially with kind of the pool, at least the way it's been in the past, maybe not so much right now, but I think a lot of times it was sort of dual nationals was the way that you could get suddenly this player who's playing for Bayern or who's playing in the Dutch league or in Spain or whatever, that's suddenly like, oh, this guy might be eligible.
Yeah, and people get really excited about it because they believe that, like, that someone's coming from Holland is going to be better than or coming from Germany is going to be better than coming from the United States. It's just like, there is a little bit of people just wanting to, the grass is always greener on the other side, and the truth is the United States national team is only, and American soccer as a whole is only going to be as good as what we can develop with our own resources and our own pipeline over the long run.
All right.
Of course, like Germany has gotten dual nationals themselves. They've had dual nationals who've been unbelievable, like Miroslav Klose, who's one of the best World Cup performers, goal scorers ever.
Podolski as well, right?
Podolski too. Yeah, exactly. But so Germany's developed from, but you know what? They're still the best national team in the world not because of what they recruited, but because what they still produce. It's not what Poland produces, but what Germany produces. Even if they lose a dual national, they don't care because they know Germany's always going to be really, really good because of what they're producing right now is really, really good with their own resources. And in the end of the day, that's what U.S. soccer and American soccer can control. They can't, like, dual nationals when they develop elsewhere, and then all of a sudden they're discovered when they're already fully professional. Like a guy like Kenny Sciaretta, they're almost like little gifts, like you find along the way, but they're windfalls. But it's developing your own pipeline is really what's going to make a country a good soccer country or not.
That all makes sense to me, and I'm with that in mind, like maybe inclined to move away from dual nationals. Except that I have one more question.
Look, it's great when they come along. I mean, this country's benefited tremendously from from dual nationals, and some of them come in and played really hard for the national team and for all the right reasons. But it's just how far you're going to get on this, how far you're going to get as a soccer country is what you can do with your own resources. It's just true. I mean, like, FIFA made residency rules that prevented, like, countries like Qatar and some of these Middle Eastern countries from going in and naturalizing a bunch of Brazilians and having a good national team for them. I mean, no one, even if they were able to do that and do really well internationally, no one would take these countries seriously as a national team because they're all from elsewhere. It's FIFA. Those were FIFA rules that were done just for that. I mean, and U.S. doesn't do that, but it's at the same point, I think that, like, all the effort and drive in this country has to be done with, like, not just improving the national team to improve its standing with dual nationals, and it's to really just to improve our own development and make kids want to play the sport in this country because they have plenty of options. And drive young give dedicated young athletes a chance to become really good, knowledgeable, technically good, and tactically aware soccer players. And that's really what you want. The downfall about missing this World Cup is not what it does with dual nationals, but it's getting, like, the kid from St. Louis or Minnesota or somewhere like that just motivated to pick up a soccer ball, not because they're not going to see the U.S. national team this summer when everyone's going to be watching the sport. that's the big scare. That's the big loss, is like you're going to lose, like, you're not going to light a spark under some kids, but who's sitting in the middle of, somewhere between the coasts, and wanting to play, and that's my biggest fear. But I think they'll get beyond it pretty quickly.
Well, so then let's turn our attention. I think I'll move away from dual nationals then. There's one guy I did want to ask you about, but maybe I'll do that later on.
No, go ahead.
Because the only other one that I have like a question about, mostly just because I don't know anything about him and I haven't been able to read much about him, is I'm not even going to be able to pronounce his name. Is it Kik Pieri?
Yeah, I think that's close. Heerenveen, yeah. He's doing well. He's a left back too.
That's ideal.
And he's doing really well. But like, he's also involved with Holland. So he was born here, and he moved away when he was very young. As far as I've never spoken with him. And it's one of those ones where you have to kind of wait for and he should want to play for Holland because, again, he was raised there and grew up there, and has Dutch parents, so none of his parents are, I don't think his parents are American. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think his parents are Americans. But it's like he grew up almost entirely in Holland and developed entirely there. So it's playing for the U.S., playing for Holland should be his goal. And or at least I shouldn't say every play's different, but it would be most logical for most people to want to play for the national team where they grew up and developed as players, and know all the people of that generation of players. So it's it's one of those things that'll have to run its course probably, and if it doesn't work out for Holland, then and the U.S. is still interested in. And Anthony Robinson hasn't risen to be like the next great U.S. left back, then maybe there's an option down the road.
So we're basically just everybody's safety school. Is that what I'm getting at? Is that what I'm understanding?
No, certainly not everyone's safety school. I mean, for example, we're not Jonathan Gonzalez's safety school.
That's true.
When you go there, I mean, there's a guy who was part of the U.S. national teams, youth national teams, all the way from the U14s to he played for the U.S. U20 at World Cup qualifying. So there's a guy who should probably want to play for the United States. It's when you get guys who really born and or raised abroad is where you're going to be dealing with guys who probably under most circumstances want to play for that other country. And then, and when they're active, it's not like Anthony Robinson is not playing for England. So of course, the U.S. is more. But when you have guys who are actively playing for other countries where they were born and raised and developed, then you have like the safety school kind of a thing. I mean, but for Cameron Carter-Vickers, on the other hand, if England comes calling, he has to file a one-time switch, and then he's lost. Then all options are done for him. He's tied to England. But then at the same point, the U.S. was first in the door. Leaving for the U.S. would be he could turn to England and be like, well, the U.S. has shown me more dedication and love and respect my whole career, and England's only coming along late, then all of a sudden it's a more of a fair and honest kind of a debate as to where it's going to be. But when you have a guy like Kirk or Kick or Tillman, it's like then the U.S. is definitely kind of on the back burner. Right. And that's kind of understandable.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So then we look at the guys who are, I'm going to say definitely committed, at least they're guys who played at the U17 World Cup recently. Some of the names in there, like obviously that stand out, are names like, we've talked about him already, Josh Sargent. He already has the agreement with Werder Bremen once he turns 18. I believe that becomes official. What are your expectations for him, both for like the remainder of this season and then next season as well? I'm guessing minutes are going to be hard to come by, but maybe some Bundesliga 2 for him?
Yeah, or the U19 Bundesliga, which, honestly, I honestly think that that playing for Werder Bremen's U19 team is better than the U23 team, because U23s are kind of guys who are too old now, and they're still tactically kind of deficient, and U19s are really the prospects. So many players, most great players in Germany, Pulisic included, seem to make that jump from the U19s directly to the first team. Mm-hmm. And the U23 just kind of be guys who outgrew the U19 team, and they're still not good enough to make the first team. I'm thinking the U19 Bundesliga, if they can register him in time, and then I think he's going to have a really big opportunity next summer for preseason with Werder Bremen, and and hopefully he can make a dent really there in the same way that Pulisic did. It's going to when Pulisic did that a year and a half ago with that winter camp, almost 2 years ago now, the winter camp for with Borussia Dortmund, he turned heads, and all of a sudden he couldn't be. They had to keep him on that team, and so he's going to have a preseason, and then he might play sometimes with the U19 team. But I think he's got a real Bundesliga future as a teenager. I mean, I think he's that good. I think he's he's very technically good, tactically good. He reads the game well. There's not many flaws in his game. So just some refinements necessary. These top American teenagers that are playing right now, it's really exciting to see because they develop here, and then when they go overseas, they don't need as much work as they used to in the past. It used to be like they buy a European team would buy an American teenager, and they need a lot of work. They're closer now. These top level teens in this country, they're closer now to being first team ready than they ever have been. I mean, Pulisic wasn't over there that long, and he was able to make his Bundesliga debut, shortly after turning 17. Weston McKennie was there and made his Bundesliga debut after buying him out of the FC Dallas Academy within that season, and he was injured 3 months last year too. So now he was able to make his Bundesliga debut at the end of the season. Now he's a starter for Schalke. It's very exciting to see, how these and I compare, Sargent very favorably to guys of that mold. So I think he could be looking at some action, first team minutes. I think next season.
That's really interesting because, you look at Sargent maybe a couple months ago where it was like he was still with, Scott Gallagher Academy or whatever it was, and it was like he was maybe in the Sporting KC catchment area. Suddenly he's with Werder Bremen, and I would compare him with a player like Timothy Weah, who's been with PSG, has kind of worked his way up a little bit, but it does seem, strangely enough, even though Josh Sargent hasn't even joined Werder Bremen yet, it seems like now he is in a better position. Because I have a hard time believing. Yeah, I just have a hard time believing Timothy Weah is going to get first team minutes for PSG, even if he says that's what he expects.
PSG is tougher than PSG is a tougher nut to crack, obviously, than Werder Bremen. But still, even then, Sargent seems to have a little bit more tools and less refinement. I like Timothy Weah. I think he could be a first team pro sometime soon, and. He's not the first American youth international this year to have very, big familial connections to the game. And that's exciting. There's nothing wrong with that. I think, but Sargent just looks like, just so ready right now. His movement in and out of space is so good. And it's just exciting. Like I just said, when they come over there, it's, what they're producing, and Scott Gallagher, they've produced a lot of good players. Tim Ream being one of them.
I didn't know that.
They've produced a lot of very good players in and around St. Louis, which has been the home to many good players. Twellman, and you could just go on and on. But it's Scott Gallagher. It shows that kids are not learning necessarily all at these nice academies that they have here in this country too. Kids are being driven to play, on the streets and play in fields, play with friends, and and then go play with their teams and get good coaching too. So we have a different generation of American players, and you can see that with how quickly they're able to make breakthroughs. Like I said, Miazga went from the Red Bulls, and granted he was a MLS best 11 his last year with the Red Bulls too, to playing with Chelsea a couple of times, then to really, I think he's going to hit 2,500 minutes the calendar year of 2017 for Vitesse, and that's huge. And he won a Dutch Cup. So you're getting guys who go over there now who are very close to being first team ready. Or if not first team ready when they get over there. So, it's kind of a testament to the next generation that makes me more optimistic, despite of national team failures, that it's going to be pretty interesting to see this next group kind of come through.
Yeah, I'm all about optimism, and I would like to keep going with that optimism. So if if you had someone off the top of your head, and if you don't, that's fine, I'm wondering who else you think from that U17 team is the closest to being able to make that jump, or is kind of in that position where they maybe could challenge for first team minutes, because you've got the names in there. We've already talked about Timothy Weah, we got Ayo Akinyola, Serginho Dest, Carlton, Goslin, Durkin, lots of very talented players. I'm wondering who you think is the closest to being a senior team player.
Carlton looks like, he was up and down in the U17 World Cup. There's sometimes I was like, he wasn't complete there. Then like against Paraguay, he was awesome. He was just really, really good. And England was just on another level than everybody in that entire tournament. I think every game except for one was a multi-goal win. So I think, there's a lot of good players in that attacking thing, and I think even though he didn't start, I think George Acosta looks like he could be a very good playmaker. I'm interested to see how he does. Carlton does. It's so tough just to pin your hopes on one guy. When you get that, the younger the age group, the more you have to look at the class of players more than like specific individuals, because some will fade and some will go because of all sorts of reasons, the club decisions, desire, heart, amount of push. But when you see a whole good class come through, that like it's a numbers game, like a certain amount are going to sneak through. And I thought it was a good team. Dest is good. It's how is he going to go with Ajax's U19 team? Is he going to see a lot of minutes there? As he goes from the 16s to the 19s, he only played a couple of times with them so far. Sands is very good for, I like Goslin his passing range isn't good, but I think he's a good I think that they missed him. I think, like I said, Acosta's good, and there's just a lot of good players now. And Durkin, is he going to get some time with DC United next year? I thought he looked very good, particularly in the first couple of games in that tournament. So it's a positive class of people, but when you start going that young, who knows? But I think that you're going to see a lot of. I think that tree is going to bear a lot of fruit. It's just tough to say which branch it's going to come from. That
makes sense. Well, so final question for you then. Talked a little bit about the future. In the present, we've got this relatively meaningless friendly against Portugal. Is there one player that you're most excited to see, or you would like to see get a couple minutes against Portugal or start against Portugal, or is it sort of you're just watching to see what happens?
There's three. I think it's and who knows what their rotation is going to be, but it's Vickers, it's Adams, and it's McKennie. Sargent, if you get him on the field at the end of the game, it's kind of a bonus. If he does well, that's kind of cool too. Maybe he can join like Agudelo and Pulisic as the only other 17s to score, the 17-year-olds to score for the national team in recent memory.
That'd be cool.
But I think there's only two ever 17-year-olds to score for the national team. But I digress. It's most of what is exciting about Sargent is what's going to happen with him professionally at the club level. But Vickers is playing first team minutes. Adams is playing first team minutes. McKennie is playing first team minutes. So all some higher levels than others, but those are really exciting players to watch. And that maybe they can do that and bring that back to the club level, and they're going to have a place to develop. And McKennie's the only guy who has really certain present. He's a contract. He's going to be at Schalke this year. He's going to be at Schalke next year. The other guys, you don't know, but still, they're exciting to watch. They're young, they're talented, and they deserve to be there based on their first team merit, how they're doing professionally with their clubs. And you can throw Miazga in that a little bit because I think he's going to have to really be good too. And it's also the other question is who's going to emerge as a leader. Are guys like Yedlin? This is where I'm interested because you don't know who the coach is going to be. So the players kind of have to come in and establish leadership. A caretaker manager is not going to be able to do that just because he's not going to be able to come in and demand respect because he doesn't have a job with this team in the months ahead. So is it going to be a guy like Yedlin who, has Premier League, Championship, MLS, college, U20, U7, his youth national team experience, World Cup experience? Yedlin, as a 23-year-old, has more experience than you could ever imagine for a player of that age. Is he going to come up and be like a leader? Is Miazga going to be a leader? Who's going to be like, okay, we don't know who the coach is. The national team's been kicked in the mouth. We're down and out, but rally around me. I'm going to lead you. I'll be the leader here through this tough time. Who's going to serve that role too? So it's those three young guys, and then who emerges as the leader of this team? Because the old guard is now out, man. They're done. So it's. I'm kind of interested to see who from that standpoint, who is the rally around figure.
Was that a car horn in the background? Are they not pleased with you saying the old guard are done?
That's good old New Jersey Transit.
Gotcha.
Train station, yeah.
Nice. Well, I'm assuming that you will probably be covering this U.S. national team and national teams to come. So if people want to read more about what you're doing, Brian, where can they find you?
American Soccer Now, sometimes Howler Magazine, sometimes the New York Times. I'm a friend of your show.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm on TalkSport a lot over in England, and I'm on a Sirius XM here too. So I try to make myself available to all media.
I was going to say, yeah, you're staying busy. Well, thank you, Brian, very much for taking the time. I appreciate it. It's always good to pick your brain.
Oh, thank you. Anytime.
So thank you to friend of the show, I've been told, Brian Sciaretta, for appearing on the Total Soccer Show. He's a busy man. He's a man who knows a lot. I'm always glad to hear from him.
Indeed.
Right now, we're going to talk. US Women's National Team went away to Canada. They went up to Vancouver to play the Canadian national team and came back with a 1-1 tie. So there's a rematch in the United States. It's in California somewhere. I can't remember exactly where. On the 12th of November, they will meet again.
It's a small place.
It
should be easy.
But we took a quick look at highlights and a long look at the goals. This game finished 1-1. Alex Morgan scored in the first half. Adriana Leon equalised for Canada in the second half. First thing I want to talk about, Taylor, is I think Jill Ellis has finally figured out a formation that she settled on, and it looks like this 4-3-3 with Julie Ertz, nay Johnston as the defensive midfielder.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that's what she's going to go with, and I think that's probably smart because you kind of got to stick with something to get into a rhythm and figure out what's going to work, what isn't, figure out the tweaks, figure out how to kind of adjust it if things aren't going well. I think this was a good example of that. I think there's still a lot to be figured out because of this draw. The United States at times really struggled with possession. We did not watch the whole game. From what I have read, it sounded like Sam Ewis had maybe her worst game for the U.S. Women's National Team this season.
So for people who don't know, it's the three central midfielders. It's Julia, it's his deepest defensive midfielder, and then it's Mewis and Haran slightly ahead of her, right, to form that triangle. Even the short clips we saw, I saw Mewis play the ball out of bounds more than I was comfortable with. I don't think we should be too critical because it seems like this is kind of an aberration.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, absolutely it is. But it's still, my point is that when you have those like, oh, shoot, she's having a bad game, we got to figure out how to deal with that. And it seems like maybe the United States struggled with some of that. We saw, even in the few moments we watched, it felt like it became that thing with a 4-3-3 where you start to get like a big stretch between your midfield defense and your attack. And so you end up with this like 30, 40-yard gap. You rely on a lot of long balls. You have to play out wide and kind of build slowly. It doesn't allow you to play quickly, get into the attacking third as much as you would like.
In fact, so we'll do this in reverse chronological order then, because didn't Canada's equaliser?
Yep.
It eventually comes from a corner, but they get the corner from a break where the US breaks. Lindsay Horan tries to play a long ball over the top of Alex Morgan.
Tries to break, I would say.
Yeah, but Horan plays a long ball over the top for Morgan to run onto, but it's not quite strong enough, right? So it gets headed back clear. And then
I think it just gets intercepted, and then they come right back down. Yeah.
And I think Megan Rapinoe, who is like the left winger basically in the 4-3-3, she tries to press and win the ball back, but she's kind of on her own, right? So they easily play through her, and they come back, and then Becky has the shot. It's really odd that her second name is her first name, but Becky has the shot that's tipped over for the corner that they score from. And I think that's all the things that you were talking about right there is the problem for the United States.
Because even then when you go with that long ball, you get a little bit stretched. Megan Rapinoe tries to put that pressure on. Now, again, you have a gap. I think we saw Julie Ertz sitting in a little bit, so then it's sort of there are going to be lots of different opportunities for Canada to pass through, different holes for them to find, and I think that's why you ended up having that shooting opportunity. Yes, it's from 20 yards out, but it still comes about far more easily than it should have, and with not nearly as much pressure as there should have been for a player in a shooting position that close to goal.
So we talk about what happens from the corner then.
Sure.
We're kind of doing this backwards. We'll talk about Canada's equaliser is what I was trying to say first. Yeah. So corner comes in. We notice that the US are doing a very interesting marking system where it's definitely zonal because there are US players just lined up across the top of the 6-yard box. But Christy Sinclair is so dangerous with her 100 and something goals, 100 and something international goals, that she's the only one that's man marked. Right? It's Mewis, I think, man marks her, and she still manages to get a touch. And I think she may even get the goal. Well, it's credited to Leon,
you
but
think
I'm not sure Leon touches it.
I absolutely think she scores this goal. Yeah, when we watched it, I was like, there is no... That ball doesn't move. The spin doesn't change. I feel like this is Christine Sinclair's goal that gets taken away.
But Leon does just put her arms in the air and celebrate. So I think that's why she gets the goal.
But I would say even before that happens, you have problems with the United States defending. And this is... we have this conversation all the time. We can go back to it if you want to.
Is this the zonal versus man?
Yeah, because I think if you don't execute a zone properly... you're going to have problems. And Kelly O'Hara in this one, you're supposed to attack the ball, basically. That's the point, right? You have your zone to defend, you attack the ball if it comes into your zone. The ball comes into her zone here, and she does a weird, like, NBA-style post-up where she turns around and gets her back to the player, and I think she's just trying to make sure that, like, nobody gets in behind. But then there is a player wide open at the back post.
Rebecca Quinn, number 5, she's able to get a free header at goal because I think Kelly O'Hara doesn't go for the ball, tries to do some NBA defending.
Yeah, and then from there, it felt like the United States women were just sort of all scrambling. They were all trying to make sure.
Scramble, right?
And a big part of that was Sam Mewis had clearly been told, don't lose Sinclair, make sure you stay goal side, to her detriment, because she scrambles to get back into a goal side position, but in so doing, she doesn't put pressure on Sinclair, and Sinclair is able to hit that overhead kick back across the goal. That's what puts it in.
In my opinion, Mewis overly gets goal side because then the ball goes the other side, and Sinclair is so clever that she takes advantage of the situation to essentially hook the ball over her own head towards goal, right? That's what happens.
Yes.
Like if Mewis wasn't so focused on getting goal side,
that's not what I think.
She could have got in Sinclair's face and sort of challenged for that ball.
Yeah, but I'm saying I don't think Sinclair thinks like, oh, she's not near me, I have this opportunity. I think it's just like she's desperately, because they've just hit the crossbar.
You think it's just an instinctual, just like...
Yeah, I think it's like I'm just trying to put it back into the mix area.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I think, to your point, yes, I think if Sam Mewis just goes to her right away...
Just body her.
She probably has to settle it. She probably is like, oh, I'm not going to be able to hit this cleanly, I might lose this ball, I'll try to body it, and then she'll end up going away from goal. But because Sam Mewis is trying to get back into another spot, she's then not putting that pressure on and allows Sinclair to do the kind of natural instinct thing, which is just put it back in there and see what happens. And what happens is a goal, even if she doesn't get the credit for it.
Yeah, so I think we decided Adriana Leon... We'll just let her have the goal because Sinclair has plenty.
Yeah, she's got enough.
She's got them to spare.
Yeah, but it's telling that nobody seemed to know who to celebrate with, so they ended up all kind of eventually converging together with their coach, I think. So that works. But that was the equalizing goal because the United States had taken the lead in the first half.
Okay, and so this goal, it's Casey Short, she gets the assist because she lifts it. Basically, there's an attempted clearance from Canada. Casey Short just like side foot, I think, lifts it into the box, like round about the penalty spot. And I don't know whether to credit Alex Morgan with quick thinking or to kind of blame Canadian defender, I think it's number 4, Zadorsky. I don't know to blame her for not reacting fast enough.
I mean, things can be two things, first of all, but I would say...
I should know that, shouldn't I? Yeah.
But I would say if I were going to do one or the other, I would give credit to Alex Morgan. Okay. Because I think that ball comes in, Zadorsky basically squares up because I think she thinks it's going to bounce. I'll hit it on the volley. I'll get it actually clear.
But even hearing that description, anyone would say... Don't let the ball bounce.
Well,
that's one of the rules of centre backing is don't let the ball bounce. Just meet it at the earliest point.
Well, she tries to. That's the key thing there is that Canada had tried to clear it like 4 times in a row and they'd failed. And so she, I think, goes to meet it and then sees Alex Morgan charging at her and thinks, okay, I might not win this.
So she's like, baby horse, come in, get out of the way.
Or I might clear her out and concede a penalty if I go throwing that volley and if I don't get to it fast enough. And I think that's where I give credit to Alex Morgan is because she... just with the confidence it takes, charges into that ball, and because of that, Zadorsky backs off. She doesn't go for that immediate clearance, and then
it allows... Morgan get like a glance header just to nod it on slightly for herself. Very clever header, and then doesn't smash it, but more sort of like lifts it into the corner.
I mean, I think she hits it cleanly. Yeah? I mean, because it's just she hits it on the volley. Like she puts it low. I feel like when you say lift, that implies like a
lob. Yeah, okay, that's fair.
So it's more, it's not a smash, but it's definitely like a well-struck, definitive finish.
And the interesting thing to me about this new formation, and I want to get a look at the game at home against Canada to see this matchup again, is that I remember Alex Morgan talking about when she moved over to Europe with Lyon, that she talked about how she wanted to learn to be more of the lone striker who can not rely on sort of knockdowns from a partner, like in like my classic 4-4-2 that I was talking about at the start of the show. Not just relying on, say, knockdowns from Abby Wambach that she could in the past, but more being able to be the sole striker who can come back and connect play and do all that kind of stuff. So if we can go into the 2019 World Cup with Alex Morgan as that complete player who can be the complete like Lewandowski type centre forward, then suddenly, but it frees the US up to have Morgan on the field, the goal scorer, doing that job, and to have 2 attacking wingers as well. It could really make this 4-3-3 work.
Yes. The downside is that you're talking about that as though they've just had like a smashing win where they won 4-0 and the goals. 1-1 draw.
They did against Korea last month.
This is true.
So there's that. And then Canada, one of the best teams in the world. So there's that. It's an away draw to Canada. It's not that bad. But we'll see what happens after the next game on the 12th on Fox Sports 1.
There we go.
When's the 12th? If the US game is on...
2 days from now.
2 days from now is the 12th. Yes, because today is the 10th.
Yep.
All right, so it's Sunday. Sunday night is USA v Canada. Fox Sports 1. Okay, shall we move on?
Sure.
To the TSS Scouting Network. Lots of updates for us to get to.
Indeed. Up first, we have Ryan Marzak scouting Josh Onoma. I feel like we're going to hear from Ryan later on.
Yep.
20-year-old English midfielder for Aston Villa on loan from Tottenham. The English Luka Modric...
Everyone's saying it now, look.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that because you said it?
I mean, no, I'm assuming Ryan has independently decided that Onoma is the English Luka Modric.
Lies. Continues to impress for Villa. Against Preston North End, he intercepted a lazy pass near midfield and played a brilliant pass to Robert Snodgrass near the top of the box to get his first assist for Villa. Onoma was selected for the England U21 duty, but withdrew with a groin strain.
So Ryan... Great scouting report. He sent me the video that he watched, and he put the timestamp of when Onoma intercepts that pass. Maybe because he knows I'm a big Onoma fan here. He really does like this ball. This defender, I don't know who it is, just thinks he's receiving this ball, no trouble, and then Onoma is on it out of nowhere, sprints, takes the ball forward, draws some defenders in, plays a nice little square pass for Snodgrass to score. Yeah.
There we go.
English Luka Modric. All right, up next, Mark Jones is scouting Rhian Brewster, who you may remember from the U17 World Cup. He's a 17-year-old striker for Liverpool and for the England U17s. Taylor, look out. Great Jurgen Klopp quote coming. Mark says, Brewster finished the U17 World Cup with 8 goals and the Golden Boot. Upon returning home from India, young Rhian was most excited for a trim and a kebab. That's what he did when he got back to England. Trim, I assume, his haircut, right? But I assume, Mark says, he's equally excited to rejoin Liverpool U23s. Jurgen Klopp has apparently taken notice of the young player, noting that he should, quote, have a nice party, but no alcohol. Have a nice party with Coca-Cola and Fanta or whatever. See you soon. That's a quote from Jurgen Klopp.
Yeah, that's a weird quote.
It's Jurgen Klopp.
That's just odd. As though Jurgen Klopp wasn't drinking when he was 16. Come on. He's German. Michael Hartman scouting Josh Sargent, 17-year-old striker for the USMNT, and soon Werder Bremen. Sargent was called into the U.S. national team for the friendly against Portugal. He becomes the first player to play in a U17 World Cup, a U20 World Cup, and be called into the senior camp in the same calendar year.
Pretty successful 2017 for Josh Sargent.
Word is that Werder Bremen is planning a big birthday party for Josh's 18th in February.
I guess it's a big birthday party with a contract inside a cake. Is that how I would do it, I guess?
Yeah, or just a contract. I feel like paper and cake don't mix.
Alexander King is scouting Tyler Adams, the 18-year-old midfielder / right back for New York Red Bulls and now US Men's National Team. This is genuinely the entirety of Alexander's scouting report. Let's go with 10 O's, exclamation mark. Tyler was selected for the US friendly versus Portugal.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Alex Warren scouting Eddie Nketiah.
Yeah,
sure.
Young Arsenal player, yeah.
Before my first report on Nketiah, sorry, struggling with that one, could be read on the show, he's gone and done more impressive things. Eddie scored 4 goals and grabbed an assist in England U19's 6-0 European Championship qualifying win over the Faroe Islands. Not a bad day for the 18-year-old, regardless of the level of competition.
Faroe Islands say thank you, but yes, fair enough. The first scouting report that had been sent by Alex was that Nketiah came off the bench for Arsenal in the League Cup against Norwich City, scored the equaliser and the winner, and just as that report came in, then he was busy scoring 4 goals for England U19s. So yeah, Eddie Nketiah doing big things. Dylan Viach is scouting Kai Havertz, the 18-year-old attacking mid with Bayer Leverkusen. Kai made his 3rd consecutive Bundesliga start over the weekend in Bayer's 1-1 draw with Augsburg. Played centre mid in what looked like a 4-3-3 and was given freedom to get forward. He didn't have any goals or assists, but he did create chances, and maybe most importantly, he showed off a special handshake with Kevin Volland after Volland's goal. I know how Taylor loves his handshakes.
I do love
Taylor, I had meant to show you this handshake before we recorded. It's got, it's one of those complicated, 4 or 5 move handshakes, but it ends with one sort of giant, exaggerated, hands together all the way up in the air and all the way back down. It ends with a nice, big, dramatic gesture.
That's what the kids are doing these days. You gotta love them. Mazakin Wagner scouting Mayo Ali, 25-year-old American center back who is now a free agent.
Okay, so you know where this is going.
Yes. Ali has been a free agent for about 6 months, and his online presence has completely fallen off, with both his Instagram and his Facebook running cold on updates. On top of that, there's zero online buzz from either Denmark or the Faroe Islands surrounding Ali. I even attempted to contact him directly through his Facebook and got an automatic message pointing to a long-dead page, which suggests he stopped trying to maintain a professional online presence. This may be the end of Mayo Ali's career, which is a shame because he definitely has the skills to still be competing, at least at the level he was, but it probably didn't help his confidence that he ended up getting replaced on his last team by two players 2 or 3 years younger than him.
So I think this is interesting because this may be the first example of a TSS Scouting Network player who essentially didn't make it for long enough in the professional game.
I think the other one would be the guy who's now playing for semi-pro in Wales.
Still getting paid to play soccer.
This is true.
Mayo Ali is a free agent, which essentially means soccer unemployed. And to give some background, Mazakine wanted to scout Ali because they went to the same college, I believe Bucknell University.
Bucknell, yeah.
And so it was really interesting that Ali had gone over to the Faroe Islands. It was an American in a weird place, but it looks like it hasn't worked out.
Yeah.
We would like further updates on Ali, though. Mazakine, if you would like a new player, let us know. We can assign you a new player, but maybe still keep an eye on Mayo Ali if his career resurrects.
Sure. Sounds like it's kind of reached an end. We shall see.
We'll see. KT Bochenek is scouting Timothy Fosu Mensah. He has 2 Twitter accounts. The 19-year-old Dutch defender for Crystal Palace, on loan from Man United. Following an injury to Kenny Tete, Timothy Fosu Mensah has been called up to the Netherlands squad for the upcoming friendlies against Scotland and Romania.
That'll work.
I thought you'd be excited about that, Taylor.
I am.
He's a United player.
He is indeed. Well, right now he's a Palace player. We'll see how that goes. Ryan Marzak, again, scouting Pione Sisto, 22-year-old Danish attacker for Celta Vigo. Thumbs up to Pione Sisto for showing me that soccer can still be played through the air. Sisto had 2 wonderful assists for Celta this weekend that would have made Pep Guardiola cringe. Against Malaga, it was a perfect ball that cleared 4 defenders for Iago Aspas to head home. Against Bilbao, it was a crisp 25-yard ball that set up Sergi Gomez to score. Pione's great run of form, 4 assists in his last 4 games, has earned him a call-up to the Danish national team for their crucial World Cup qualifier playoff against the Republic of Ireland.
So we haven't mentioned World Cup playoffs yet. I think maybe we should do a mini review over the weekend, as in we'll just take a quick look at the first legs when we come back for the Sunday night show.
Sweden and Italy playing as we speak.
Is that right? Oh, and I was just thinking Denmark, they have the pace and directness of Pione Sisto and the craft of Christian Eriksen. I kind of want them to get to the World Cup.
No, we shall see.
Apologies to Ireland.
Yeah, fans. I was going to say.
Michael Spinelli is scouting George Bello, 15-year-old left-back in the Atlanta United Development Academy. The Atlanta United U19s had the weekend off, so Bello was playing down with the U17s, which means he was playing up as a 15-year-old with the U19s. For the U17s' recent clash with Jacksonville Armada, Bello scored the first goal in the 2-0 win, their 9th win in 11 matches this season. TSS listeners, remember the name George Bello. I really think he's the future American left-back.
I think we will probably see him in some U.S. national teams to come. Yeah. Drew Samuels scouting Marcus Edwards, the 18-year-old English playmaker for Spurs. Marcus has been playing with the Spurs U23, U19 squads and has been a standout for both. He scored the winning penalty in the U23 North London derby and apparently bossed the U19s to a win against Real Madrid's U19s.
English Messi!
This has led me to wonder why he has not even made the bench for any Spurs senior matches this year. He's only 18, and Spurs don't like to rush their youth. But in a new book called Brave New World, Inside Pochettino's Spurs, Mauricio Pochettino had some quotes about the youngster.
I've read these quotes, and they're not good.
He has authority and behavioral problems, and we have to look at the bigger picture to find out the root cause. There was a time when it would have been impossible for him to play professionally, let alone make it in the Premier League.
Can you imagine hearing your manager say that about you?
Our challenge is to get him to accept the pathway we've laid out for him, and it's our responsibility to make sure he behaves himself when he trains with the first team with all rules and obligations this involves. He has no shortage of talent, but there are gaps to be filled. He has to learn to score ugly, run more, and be committed. I don't understand why he said this.
Why Pochettino said this?
Yeah,
I don't either. Unless it's to give Marcus Edwards a bit of a shock treatment.
But that still seems like a really bad idea. That seems completely ineffective to me. To put in a book about an active player, that seems very foolish.
From memory, the book is written with Guillaume Balaguer. So it may be that it's not like Pochettino chose to print that, but Balaguer got him to talk about that and then printed it.
I have no horse in this race, but seriously, this seems horrible to me. Why would a coach do that? Can you imagine? That's some stuff that if Mourinho did, people would be like, he is the worst. He's criticizing players openly in a book. Like, that seems very strange to do, especially to an 18-year-old who's still employed by your club.
Yep.
That seems like something you write about a kid who didn't reach his potential, and you're sort of explaining about how that can be a problem.
But maybe he's worrying that that's what's about to happen.
Yeah, but if you're worried about that, then you have that conversation with him in a locker room, not to a journalist who's writing a book. That just seems very strange to me.
All right, well, we'll keep an eye on what happens with Marcus Edwards, or at least Drew Samuels will. Thank you, Drew. We had 2 quick reports came in just before closing, before we close them shop. I'll get them really quickly. Clay Jenkins, scouting the 17-year-old English winger for Borussia Dortmund, Jadon Sancho. Jadon got 10 minutes for Dortmund against Bayern Munich. This is the kid who went to the U17 World Cup with England. Lewis Graf, scouting Joshua Kimmich, had a follow-up to his last scouting report. Do you remember his last scouting report?
Which was wrong.
Said Kimmich missed Der Klassiker with stomachache, which we interpreted to mean diarrhea.
Right.
Lewis has a follow-up to say that he magically healed himself, played in Der Klassiker, and got himself an assist. I would say in Lewis's defence, it was reported widely that Kimmich was missing the Klassiker, and then he turned up at right back.
Yeah, and played the whole game.
played the whole game. So thank you to everybody for the scouting reports today. If you would like to join the TSS Scouting Network and support the Total Soccer Show, the URL is totalsoccershow.com/join. If you sign up at $10 a month or more, we are guaranteeing to answer a question a month. Sign up at any level. We'll assign you a player to scout so you can send scouting reports to TSS.
Indeed we will, my friend. Indeed we will.
All right, Taylor Rockwell, thank you for doing all the interviews and for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening. We'll be back again Sunday night with our USA v Portugal preview.